My name's Stuart Tulloch, I'm Head of Programme at Firstsite, and this is Michael Landy. And we thought this evening then to chat about how Michael Landy's Welcome to Essex has been made, how we put it together, the conversations we had, the things that made it into the show, the things that didn't, the laughs, the kind of the comedy in all of it. It's been in some instances it's been 2 years in the making of Welcome to Essex as an exhibition, but actually goes back further and goes back to when I first started in my role at Firstsite 5 years ago, or very soon after, where Sally Shaw, director of Firstsite, where we went to Freeze, and we were thinking about ideas for the programme. And at that time, Michael, you were showing breaking news with on the Thomas Dane stand. And this was also the time of, so Brexit had just happened as well. So Brexit was June, this was kind of October time. And whilst we didn't do anything immediately, Brexit is kind of the start for this show, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess from our conversation we had a few days ago, actually, you did remind me all of this, which I'd completely forgotten about. But yeah, I did a whole project called Breaking News. I did Breaking News Athens, where I asked Greece was going through a kind of financial meltdown. And there's an organisation called Neon, and they asked me to come up for a project, and the idea was to ask the Greek public their thoughts and feelings about living in Athens and Greece at that particular point of time during, widespread cuts. I'm sure you all saw pictures of people, angry Greek people holding placards, demonstrating against various governments about having their pensions cut and everything. And so I had this team of people who helped me create these drawings. People from Athens would send in pictures of, there's a lot of graffiti in Athens, so there's a lot of graffiti actually in the exhibition, and people would send me images and thoughts and feelings, and it kind of dealt with kind of Greek life in general, and then I had a team of people who created drawings out of this, blue and white drawings to mimic the Greek flag. And then these drawings would end up in this old, dilapidated old school over a period of 4 months. So you'd kind of walk in at the beginning. There wasn't very much happening apart from my team of people creating the drawings. And then over the 4 months, these drawings would appear. And it was, so I think that was the kind of topical thing. And that kind of topicality then led me into to Brexit in a sense, and I was someone asked me to do an exhibition in Riga in Latvia, and I was like struggling to come up with some ideas, and then the curator said, we've got this old Soviet kiosk, and I thought, what can I do in a kiosk? And then over the weekend I came up with this idea of creating a Brexit kiosk, because it was at that point in time when Theresa May was in power, and she talked about Britain being open for business. And so I thought, okay, that seems like we'll create this kiosk and we'll sell British products to people, because Latvia is a recent member of the EU. And
which is where this hat comes in as well.
And that's where,
which I wore by chance today. But also then, so you were in the kiosk, you made...
Yeah, it was like a fully functioning kiosk, and it was like a souvenir kind of kiosk place where we sold, tote bags and baseball. We had like Up Yours, Delors, tote bags, and
fridge magnets,
hard Brexit condoms, and we played like British music. We'd have Welsh choir singing, we'd have marching music, we'd have punk music, and that played, and we had a sign that rotated around the kiosk saying open for business, and then at one side I had like some tabloid newspapers, which is very actually reminiscent of what I've got in the exhibition at the moment, like headlines talking about, Queen backs Brexit, Up Yours, Delors. So it's kind of those kind of tabloid rhetoric, which And we had like Margaret Thatcher, she goes to Bruges, and when they're talking about having closer affiliations with the EU, and she says no, no, no. And so it kind of partly kind of looks back at our relationship, but also, you know, we sold British products.
Yeah.
I can't quite remember what they were. Marshmallows, not marshmallows.
Marmite.
Thank you.
I remember Marmite.
Yeah.
Wagon Wheels.
Iron Brew is very popular.
And because all this is then in Riga.
Yeah, it was painted like a Union Jack as well. It's a big Union Jack. I painted this. So we refurbished this kiosk, and it was like this big Union Jack, basically. So people like from Britain would be coming over, thinking, "Oh Christ, I've just got to get away from Brexit," because that's all we spoke about for 5 years. And suddenly they just saw this big Union Jack, and they thought it was for real. To be honest, they thought it was, you know, it looked like something from would be sponsored by UKIP or something.
And then we were then back in touch, where you said, how about, so for an idea for Firstsite, how about we bring the kiosk over to Essex? Yeah. And then, but not show it in the gallery, because we talked about that, because that made it more feasible for us, but it's you wanted it outside. Was there then, so that's the kind of then the first, I suppose the first step then of the project, of what we could make together. Were you, at that point, were you putting Brexit and Essex together, or was it just that we'd been in touch with a project?
Well, obviously, the majority of Essex voted for Brexit. But I wanted to like show it. I was going to show it in like Remain and Leave places. I think that was the idea. And we'd also have conversations with people. I think that was part of the idea. Record the conversations with people. You know, because we'd start and then we'd start having to talk about, you know, our relationship with Europe. But obviously, ultimately in the end, that never came to fruition. But I think there's most definitely a connection with the headlines. The kind of the tabloid headlines, like I said, from the kiosk, and obviously the headlines, because that's one of the things when I first started to look at the project was what struck me was just the actual like tabloid headlines, and the headlines in general was something, and that's kind of spans like 30 years, and I guess that was that connection with the Brexit kiosk, how that kind of relationship and the kind of rhetoric that was being used to talk about our membership of the EU, and how that had been going on for like 30 years as well. Yeah. So I think that was a connection.
There's a connection there. Yeah. When we kind of then set dates, so like, okay, let's think about a project for 2020 as it was going to be, and we would chat, and I come and see, and then I remember you would say, I haven't had an idea yet, but I'm still thinking. And I remember though they were really nice of kind of then going over to your studio.
Well, it was always around Essex, wasn't it? I mean, I don't know
if it was. I'm not too sure. I think you would say, I'm thinking of doing something about Essex. Not too sure yet. Is there one of the? I remember vividly you sending me a message about Simon Heffer, and I wondered whether it was actually Simon Heffer that was the. Yeah. Actually, I know exactly what it could be now. So Simon. So we timed the exhibition that it was first going to open October last year, which was then the 30-year anniversary.
30th anniversary
of Simon Heffer's article about Essex Man, where he termed the phrase Essex Man, which is then on the back of our Essex Man here, and is also printed in full in the exhibition. And you were doing a project in Australia, in Sydney. Was it in Sydney? And you were at breakfast, and Simon Heffer was also there.
Yeah, the Hef was there in the room with me at 8 o'clock in the morning, and because I got them up the. I think the first thing that struck me was the art that Simon coined, and I knew somehow Simon had coined the phrase. So then I ordered the paper from one of those historical newspaper places, got the paper, consumed, and then looked up what Simon looked like. And then about a month later, I was having breakfast in Sydney at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the Hef was there. And I just thought, no, it's got to be some sort of weird. Well, obviously it's a sign. First of all, that's a sign from whoever, and I've got to go with. And then he was having his second breakfast, and then I got the confidence to go over there and said, "Oh, hello, you're Simon Heffer, aren't you? And he said, yeah. And he was very polite. I mean, I was interrupting his breakfast. And then, and I said, oh, you're that chap that coined that phrase, Essex Man. And I thought, that could, sometimes he does get a lot of jip for that as well. People do give him a hard time because some people obviously blame him for the whole, what that kind of instigated in a sense. And I said, oh, it'd be really great to meet up and ask you later on what motivated you to write about that piece in particular in the first place. So, I mean, we did meet up in London once we got back from Australia. But I think I was really like, that's a sign.
Yeah.
I never had a sign like that before. And I thought that's a sign. So that's what I went with, really.
Yeah.
And that's obviously why now we've got 8.5 foot meter. Essex Man in the foyer space.
Before we come to him, then in the office, I mean, from those first chats, so I printed off there are three images and they're still on the office wall, and there is Simon Heffer. There's the other one is a portrait of Margaret Thatcher in dappled sunlight, and then there's a Ford Mondeo as well.
Yeah.
And I think from that first time, those conversations, you were really looking back to the kind of the beginning of the influence of Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah, because I talk about like 1979, I leave school. That's when Margaret Thatcher comes to power, I think. And so things change. I think that's what people talk, things change. The country changes. I think the southeast of England changes a lot. Yeah. I think Essex as well. And like Simon writes the piece, because he's on a train coming into London from Chelmsford, and it's just this big guy chatting on his mobile phone, his big tablet mobile phone in the early 90s, I guess. Talking to his bookmaker, and then Simon creates this character, this guy, who owns his own home, has his own small business, has very, individualistic needs in a sense. Loves his family, loves his Rottweiler, loves Linda Lasardi, and but it's rather brutish, doesn't like culture, and that's why I kind of like Essex Man staring at people as they come in, because Simon creates this portrait of this person who doesn't like culture in a way. Yeah. And so he creates this kind of, I think, a kind of piece of writing that one could only really create back in 1990 in a way. Yeah. Because it's quite classist. It's, so for all those, I think it would be very difficult to write something like that. But he basically coins this phrase and he identifies this particular kind of character. Yeah. Which, And
was the kind of the first one of the first ideas for the show, wasn't it? But because you would be drawing.
That's the instigator in a way. That's what I don't know. I was thought about doing something with Essex Man.
Originally he was going to be, the idea was to bury Essex Man.
Yeah, he was going to bury Essex Man.
So he was going to be maybe here in the foyer,
just over there.
Exactly. We never got to know where he would be, but over there. Over there. Under glass, so which is then a kind of looking at like a nod to the mosaic that is at the centre.
Yeah, the Beresford mosaic over there, or I like because he has his attributes in a sense. Yeah.
That would be with him.
Yeah, he would be buried, and I think that was partly and that also because they unearthed the Pritwell prints back in where they found him on the Southend orbital roundabout. I can't remember exactly when that was, but there's a time, because I like to make connections. There's a Time team film of when they unearthed the Pritwell prints on the A127, I think it is. Yeah. And so I think I used that as a way of, because they call him the king of bling in a sense, and so I like the idea of making that connection and putting him underground. But then he would be more like a relic in a sense.
Yeah. And obviously then we didn't. And he stands very tall and menacing, and also very proud. The entrance here, but we still. What I found interesting as you go through the ideas is that there are some that haven't made it into the show, but that you would, You know, something you would spend time. It was a bit like you're kind of making fine wine with this. That if something isn't quite right, how about we try it with this motif? How we try that?
Yeah, I mean, partly over Zoom meetings, isn't it? So Zoom in
Yeah.
itself is like, because you're not, so it's endless in a way.
Yeah.
Ideas are endless. Well, they're not endless, but they're
they-
finite in a way, but some things obviously get made, some things don't. I was just thinking, as we were talking, obviously, you know, with Margaret Thatcher, she is in the exhibition because obviously, I mean, I talk about Essex going blue because of Brexit, but it also goes blue because of the right to buy.
Yeah.
Because right to buy is obviously Essex Man owns his own council home, ex-council home, and so that's also a very popular policy within, you know, working class people as well. And she's also in the film there's a program called Class Rules, and it has also, she's also involved in how like Essex Man is from like working class stock, and
Yeah.
he comes into, you know, his parents were formerly from Romford or Ilford or something, and they moved further into Essex, and then he's coming back into London to make money because financial markets changed in 1986, and suddenly, you know, it's open for young, predominantly male working class people who are very savvy at making money to come into the city and to make money for themselves. And I think that was the phenomenon in a sense that Simon recognised, but also that's how the country changes really
Yeah.
quite radically, you know, because, you know, I remember as a child, you know, mum going to Romford Market buying candles because we had a 3-day week, you know, literally, you know, lights went out. You know,
Yeah.
so it's, I mean, that was part of the precursor, isn't it, for Thatcherism in a
Yeah.
sense. And we have, when Margaret Thatcher gets stabbed in the back by the Tory party, the film crew go to Romford and go to Hollywood's in Romford, and they talk to Essex Man, who's really a Thatcherite, really. He doesn't really like the Tory party, because even back then it was still mostly predominantly public school boys, and, you know, it was much more, as they loved Maggie.
Yeah.
And they have this Vox Pop where they talk about how their house, so they're really angry about how they've stabbed Margaret in the back.
So lots of this then makes its way into the archive of the exhibition.
Yeah.
The idea of then making an archive came after Essex Man. Of that, was it in that you realised that because of your research and that you were looking so much that this could then form a bigger thing and has then, because it's become the central thing of the show,
the amount
isn't it?
of it in a way. I actually did an archive exhibition when I was in Sydney, because that's what I was doing with John Caldor, who I did a project with in Sydney, but John's been working with artists since. Did a project with Christo, and I can't quite remember, was that 1970? But I worked with his archive, so suddenly, you know, I started working with archive, which is quite ironic since I destroyed my own archive in Breakdown, but I started working with other people's archives.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, I'm quite trustworthy on the whole, unless it's my own stuff. But, and so, I tried to make that connection, you know, and between, you know, James Wentworth Day in 1979 talks about Essex being the rubbish dump of London, and I become interested in the estuary. I start looking at the estuary, and I start looking at, you know, all the rubbish that used to come along the estuary and would get dumped. Literally, you know, we got Victorian landfill sites at the side of the estuary that now broken up and coming back into the river. And so, and then obviously my world belongings also ended up in mucking. And so things, you know, buried underground, you know, things get forgotten about. And I realised that also Essex doesn't, because I felt a bit apprehensive about it really, because I knew people also didn't want to deal with this stuff anymore, because they just got like a bit over it. And there's also a big divide between North Essex, South Essex.
Yeah.
You know, it's a whole, you know, it's a big, you know, cultural divide. I mean, and so it kind of, so for all those different reasons, but that's what I was kind of interested in, actually, is unearthing all that stuff, really. All that stuff we partly buried away, forgotten about, all that kind of unpleasant kind of stuff. Yeah,
because you've become quite, I mean, you've amassed...
Obsessed?
There's a certain, I mean, I suppose that of looking both culturally, politically, environmentally, that you've really, over these past 2 years, you've taken Essex apart in a way, through a kind of a fascination of it.
What interests me, what interested me about it. I guess. My friend Clive, who I talk about quite a lot, I mean, we were driving down the A13, and he said, "Oh, Essex is really flat, but you have these hillocks, and that's landfill or land raise."
Yeah.
So I became really interested in that, the idea of burying things underground. And Simon Heffer talks about Essex Man creating these piles of wealth, and of course, ultimately, most of that stuff, it's compulsory obsolescent, and it's obsolete, and we end up burying it. We used to bury it underground. We used to incinerate it. What do we do with all this hardware that, what happens to it all?
Yeah.
And ultimately at the end of its life. So I'm kind of interested in that, and I think with the archive, it was just the amount, like Essexism, it was just the amount of stuff, Essex girl, the kind of derogatory noun where they talk about Essex woman, Essex girl being this monster of consumption. So I was interested in that. And so how that's all played out. And obviously I come from Ilford in Essex, which was part of Essex till 1965, and it was no longer. But we go to Romford and we talk to people, and people still have this affiliation with Essex. A lot of people still feel they are still part of Essex.
Yeah, even though Romford isn't part of Essex as well.
Because it left in 1965.
Yeah.
But the bizarre thing is, like, on our school books, it was always like with the three sexes and stuff, so it was always like Ilford, Essex. And I think also my way, because I recreated my family home in Ilford and Essex for another project in 2004, and the Daily Telegraph sort of said, Essex Man's home truths. So I think lots of my imaginary friend Clive used to always be talking about Essex.
So it's really a homecoming.
In DIY, because sadly, DIY centres sprouted up in the 1980s. And there was a real DIY culture back then, and he's from Brentwood, so we'd always end up talking about Essex. So for lots of different connections, really, I always felt I had some business with Essex that I had to deal with.
And Rick, because the show is then made, kind of conceptually, then is in line with other work. I mean, because we're also showing the breakdown of the archive, which is then 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And so wonderful to have a piece of which then you're very well known for, and is a real kind of marker within British art, what was going on then, and seeing that there are similarities between the kind of a process of kind of going through something of the interest in destruction, the interest in cataloguing as well with the Essex.
Yeah.
I mean, so the archive exhibition includes some of the material that we could put in there, that we had space for, but the pamphlet, the handout you've got that was on your chairs that's everything, isn't it? That's every bit of research, of articles of having found over the past 2 years.
All those stories. Yeah.
So are you often then looking to then are there I'm trying to think, conceptually, is that always then within every project? Are you always then coming to wanting to destroy something, to wanting to chart something, to wanting to kind of then
I guess like cataloguing things, I like, you could say I made weed etchings, I like catalogued a plant that's dying, and I tried to catalogue that with an etching tool and tried to get that down as quickly as possible. I've drawn people's faces, no necks before, and try and catalogue their features. So I think there is something imprinted in my psyche from a young child. You put something in front of me, I'd draw it. I mean, I spent my whole time, that's what you put, anything I would draw. I mean, and just to get it down onto paper. So I think I think that's probably ran throughout, and my interest in rubbish, people, what we give value to, really, worth, value to human beings, to rubbish, to weeds. So I think they are my interests. I think they are my interests. I don't think they necessarily were my interests at the beginning.
Yeah.
But I think they have more and more have become my interests. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to talk about the Plotlanders because I never heard of the Plotlanders, and then there's a book called Arcadia for All, and just chronicles the stories of, because we talk about the right to buy DIY, home ownership, and how in between the war, how people, went off into Kent and Essex, who bought a bit of land, but a bit of English soil for £5 with no amenities, and built homes out of it. And I was, because I'd never heard, and I was really taken back by that and really honoured by it in a way because they were artists in a way, because they're building stuff from what's around them, and I thought, and I rationalised it because that's what artists do, isn't it? You're left with things, and then you try to make something of it. And we've got like a short film where we're working class people literally at their weekends and their summer holidays going and with rudimentary building skills build homes for themselves, and so I thought to honour that in a way.
And as does the wall as well, isn't it? So there's of the other work that's then ongoing is then of looking at those. I suppose the knowledge of others, the kind of the expertise, the academic of it, so a work that's being made in sections and from a series of walks that you've been on four or five now, with more that we plan to then, and this first section that we're sat in front of here, in response to a walk that you went to with Gillian Darley, and so talking to others about their views of Essex, about what they think about it, their history. That there is then this, as you've put the archive together, and what's in their inventory, then this is then responding to a different side, I suppose someone else's expertise.
It's like the sign says, a much maligned county in a sense, and I think Gillian writes a very positive book an informative book about Essex, which is very popular. And as I was talking to her, I was thinking, God, I might just make all this negative stuff about Essex, and she's writing this very positive book, and that's why partly I wanted to talk to her about it in a way. And we actually walk along, because that line there is like the kind of thing that looks like a caterpillar. That's actually landfill, and I don't know if that's London rubbish or Southend rubbish, but that's the kind of walk that we conduct. And Gillian wanted to walk on this walk where we actually literally walk along. I can't remember where it's from, but we end up in Leon Sea, and you have like Hadley Castle. You could look over at Hadley Castle, and is it Two Tree Island as well? Is it Free Tree or Two Tree Island? But anyway, and I basically, very much similar to a lot of my drawings, they're kind of diaristic in a way, and they're like things that crop up in a conversation. And because the original idea was to do the Essex Way walk, which is like an 82-mile walk between Epping and Harwich. But I think we changed it into like people's favourite walks. Really.
That's right. Yeah. There's also, I think in your practice as well, it seems to be from destroying, from compacting, but also incredibly beautiful drawing. Someone I was chatting to a couple of weeks ago who had great admiration of when artists drew, everybody drew, and everybody, this kind of tradition of kind of making. Does that, you're kind of superbly kind of work on something that is of a skill of draughtship and then of this more maybe Machiavellian, more of wanting to kind of pull it apart.
Yeah.
And we've kind of got it all in this show.
Yeah, you got it all. Yeah, you have all. Yeah. Well, I guess the drawing part is how I got into making art in the first place. So, because I had a skill, and that led me to art school. And I didn't really have much. The most formal training I ever had about drawing was in those 2 years of my foundation course. And then by the time I got to Goldsmiths, no one taught you anything. Yeah. So just that was just about surviving. That was the art of survival. That wasn't about any. And so. I was taught well on my, about how to look, and then life drawing I could look at, and then by the end of it I could draw. Without even looking at the paper, I'd like. Yeah. And so, like I say, that was my way in before I realised one could be an artist, or one could make a livelihood out of this,
Yeah.
of some description. And so,
Well, I mean, because Essex Man here is taken from an original illustration by Edward Collet.
Yeah.
But that's your drawing. That's your drawing of Edward Collet.
Oh yeah, I'm a copyist. Like I said, you
of
put
it.
anything in front of me,
Yeah.
I'll draw it. I mean, a copy is like Giacometti talks about a copy. That's how you get to know what the world looks like, by copying it in a way. And that's how artists get to know how things are constructed, how are made, because you render them, and you can have like creative copies as well. Artists leave things out of copies. They change copies. They do all sorts of things. So I think that's that's. I mean, but like, all the negative headlines, I guess that's what I was like, I was drawn, like we were, like Essex is like the least amount of biscuit tins of any counties of Essex.
Really?
Yeah, the least amount, because we also have another landscape thing about where Kent is the garden of Essex, as England, as Essex is only the patio.
Yeah.
So there were all these kind of jokes. A lot of them, Essex is crap, the spitting image thing, crap, rubbish. And then it's like how we feel about rubbish. What does that, always been interested in, I've said about value and what value we give to things. And
which is how you've then, I suppose, kind of visually with the archive element of the show, of placing monitors of the moving image material kind of on screens in industrial sized bins. Yeah. That, when we were planning the show and these ideas, there was two ways that, or I certainly could think of it, were people thinking that this was then saying Essex is rubbish, but for you then saying, well, actually this is the material itself is kind of culturally, it's kind of a cultural landfill. Yeah. What I think is so masterful with the show is how it kind of then hovers between, it's up to a visitor, it's up to an audience how you want to perceive that, how you don't get drawn, it's like you go to an edge of how much that you're showing quite derogatory material, but you're then able to let the audience to decide what they want to make of it and how they want to decide. Yeah,
because you basically just reflect it back onto people. That's what you do, isn't it? I mean, that's how I saw it. Anyway, you just reflect it. All this stuff that's been created over the last 30 years, and then by the media, and then you just reflect it back out in a sense. And I think that's obviously what I tried to do. But obviously, like, with the bins and with rubbish, and like how the estuary becomes this place where the rubbish used to come up, and like how Nicholas Pevsner refers to Harlow and Basildon, and so for all those reasons, really.
It's a masterclass, I have to say, of how to do that.
Well, I think that can only really happen during lockdown. I think that was because obviously the archives were all shut in a sense, so it's a lot of it you're just gleaning from newspaper articles, and so all that info. I mean, I'm not sure I've ever spent so much time on the archive. It's only because it literally locked down. We had nothing else to do. I spent so much time digging up all this stuff, really, and I called it stuff and digging, probably on purpose, because that's what you unearth things, don't you? Like the idol, Dagenham idol, which I'd never heard about. That's on the Becontree estate, which is the largest housing estate apparently in Europe, and I'd never heard of this idol, and I thought, what's this idol? And it's like the earliest like human form we have, sculpted form in this country, and I became really intrigued by the idol, and it's in Valence House on the Becontree estate, and I went to it's just a 45 centimetre.
What's in the cabinet at the back there is
it's
that's
an exact
scale,
replica, because we got Bluetooth not Bluetooth, blue laser technology.
We got some sophisticated technology.
As you can
to
tell,
scan
I draw, and with a pencil, and anything else is. But yeah, so it's like, was it 4 million measurements? I think the blue laser made something like amazing amount of measurements, and. It's 2,250 BC, and they literally found it when they were clearing the Ford Works in 1922, and they unearthed it, and it was next to a dead deer, and obviously some kind of ritual or some kind of, they unearthed it, and it ended up on a piece of Scots pine, which I think at that point they dated it as not coming from this country. It was like from Northern Europe, and they found very similar ones in Hull, called the Rouge Car figures, and that's why my idol ended up with a phallus, detachable phallus, because the ones very similar looking in Hull had a detachable phallus.
And then, so I mean, the Dagenham idol then, and when it becomes the Essex idol for your work, then I suppose you kind of then put a very, it's modern. I suppose it's cultural reference to modern Essex. Is its gold? Is something precious in that? But is then culturally it then also kind of then links to what is going on in the wall as well, of then looking at the other history, the history that is maybe forgotten about.
Well, and that's
as we think about
book, in a sense,
so much now,
unearthing things that people have overlooked or have no prior knowledge of. So and I guess that's my job as well, isn't it? It's somehow reconfiguring the idol, and then I like the idea of transforming it into the Essex idol, so it's a much more kind of generalised idol. And then obviously we have it buried underground. Because they coined the Firstsite the golden idol when it first opened 10 years ago. And so golden banana. The idea that the banana gives birth to the golden idol. Yeah.
So that thing of putting something in the ground. Yeah. So while it didn't become Essex Man, it then became the idol.
Yeah, it became the idol.
We got in there. Because there was another chat that we had about having a 8-meter inflatable idol here before we had.
That's right, because you got into a chat with somebody about
I did, who makes
inflatables.
Yeah, who gets lots of artists now. Yeah, having made Jeremy Deller's.
No, I still like my cutout Essex Man.
Yeah,
I did think about maybe like squashing the idol, the inflatable, into a room. That's as far as I got. But yeah, I've had lots. Yeah, and obviously we were talking about the forts along the estuary, and because that's the other thing, like Tilbury Fort, Martello Towers, the Coal Horse Fort, and I also had the idea of turning, because we have a sign that says "Welcome to Essex," which is when you drive into Essex, it says "Welcome to Essex," and I was going to take the sign. The signs, and turn them into bricks and turn them into a fort. That was another idea I had. So yeah, I mean, this is all over lockdown, as you can imagine, because you literally can't do anything like a physical exhibition in a real space. So every Friday afternoon we would have a conversation. It went on for how long?
It would have been 2 years that we were doing the show, but I mean all the way through lockdown.
But Zoom,
because then we had the idea, we should do this every week. So we started on Fridays.
I was running out of ideas by the end of it. Just trying up.
And Fridays became Wednesdays because we realised on Friday we had lots of good ideas, but then the weekend would get in the way. So we thought we forget about
the ideas by.
Yeah, it was like, did you do that? Oh, yeah.
And then I thought, is this ever? Am I ever going to have an exhibition? Is this like for real? Is this for real? Is this ever going to happen?
So, but the other, because I mean the other kind of. The other link then is that from Breakdown and Essex and this show and an idea was one, you had an idea for the, if I'm right, for what you were going to do with everything that was destroyed with Breakdown. You had thought about if you could bury it under Lakeside.
Or a shopping centre at one point,
was one idea, which then didn't happen.
No.
But then the understanding that everything from Breakdown is buried in Essex somewhere.
Yeah, which I didn't know. I mean, it was subsequently, because by the end of it, I had enough of it all. I didn't really want to deal with the remains. But I think one of the ideas I did have before that, was to bury it in a shopping centre. So and then here lies the remains of,
Then we thought if we knew where that place was, we could unbury it.
We could dig it up.
That would be a nice idea.
Yeah.
And then we could actually then bring back Breakdown.
Yeah.
And so that came an idea that maybe Landfill could be, we could have a stack of Landfill at the entrance as well.
Yeah, that was another idea. Yeah, because now it's Landfill. It's now part of Essex Wildlife Trust, and so it's Landfill, and it's landscaped, and so I've had so many different ideas. I mean, but this is the exhibition. Ultimately, you have to, you have
but
to decide.
They're all kind of there, aren't they? I mean,
they're all still. My sketchbook's at home.
Yeah,
I was going through them this morning just to remind myself exactly, where I was.
But they've all kind of found their way some way or other.
Yeah, in
whether
the exhibition.
It's a drawing or whether it's there.
Whether literally or ethos-wise, it's found a way. Like the estuary, like how they draw Essex. I think that's the first, because because the estuary is also because of the forts, because obviously they're trying to keep foreign invaders out, and so that's why I think they draw that particular map on the right-hand side, because they want to map everything else out, because they need to know what they need to defend, and so so I've come at it at different angles. And then try to make connections as well. Yeah,
interesting. Before we hand over to questions, I was asking earlier of feedback from visitors, because there was a point when we're making it that we thought we could get lots of complaints. It's quite often when you make an exhibition about your home county, then you're usually then talking about what's fantastic, what's great, how culturally important you are in a very shining a very positive light on it. Whereas this is really looking at a very analytical, looking how the media have interpreted how it's there. In a way, it's kind of counter to the messages that tourism will use for Essex.
They try and break the stereotype, because they spend a lot of money on Essex County Council, breaking the stereotype. I think when Towie came along in 2010, I remember someone from the Essex County Council said, "Oh, this doesn't really help. This show doesn't help." The idea of trying to break that kind of stereotype that was created at some point in time.
Interestingly, the gallery assistants we were talking to earlier were saying that actually this show has been one of the best received shows. Has so much of the conversations that have been had. Interesting also, in depending on the age of visitors, of how they will look at it. That of either feeling so older will then see it, maybe have a lighter view on it. Younger will take it more personally, kind of more kind of a feelings. Nobody's wanted to, you were hoping maybe there could be protests and that there were, people
it's only from the Essex Girl Liberation Front.
Yeah, but there's been people have been really intrigued by it.
Oh, well, okay.
I mean, but I think that's
you
fantastic.
Want me to be disappointed?
No, I'm not. I thought it was just because so much of that, we spent a long time.
No, we did worry about it, how people would react to it, and because you could take it quite literally, saying, I'm saying Essex is crap. But that's not my intention. Some could walk in and just take it quite literally and think that's what I'm trying to say, which is not the case. But which is good. I
think it's fantastic. Which is, I say, about how superbly.
Because obviously you don't want to isolate your audience.
But it kind of hovers between that way of then allowing people to be for their own feelings towards it. I think is
that's good.
It's fantastic.
I mean, that's what I was saying. What I was really my main was how it's been portrayed since. I mean, it was around before Simon coined the phrase, and then Essex Girl comes along in 1991, and Essex Girl jokes. And they're like misogynistic and aggressive, but but you have to deal with that, and I think we have dealt with it just by kind of unpicking the book and showing it in the vitrine. you know, and you have very bizarre titles like, you can't be in Harry Potter, you're from Essex.
Yeah.
There are no virgins in Essex, and the next day some prince, oh yes, we found some virgins in Essex. All that, I mean, all those kind of very, Essex Man, end socialism. So, and I think that was a direct kind of what I was with the headlines from the Brexit headlines as well.
Yeah. Yeah. As you kind of put in one of the interviews that you've conducted for the show, that, when this stereotype began, Essex was the butt of the joke.
Yeah.
But very quickly was in on the joke.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of Towie in a sense. The only way is Essex is people suddenly become kind of savvy and they kind of play along with it to an extent. I mean, that's one of my other ideas that I had, was to get some people from the, because it's structured reality programs, and they don't have a literal script, and I was going to have some people maybe conduct some kind of, they would come into Firstsite, people, from town, and would have a conversation about the art, or go to the cafe, or use the loos, or something, but it would just be like performative. It wouldn't be recorded. They would just come in and like how they would talk on the show, and we'd I had that idea as well. So various things really. I think I also talk about like the working class. I think the Essex Man and Essex Guy, I mean, they're slightly against the grain in a sense, and it's normally like middle class people talking about working class aspiration. Anyone with aspirations, and that's what they have, because they want to make their lives better for themselves and for their family, and they kind of get shot down for it, and they get sneered at, and I think that's part of the exhibition as well. I think.
There's plenty more for a follow-up.
Sorry?
There's plenty more for a follow-up. Are there any
I don't know, I think I've run out of material.
Are there any questions?
Or a simple question is there a book? Because if there isn't, there's certainly a book in it.
No, there's no book. We're just obviously the Essexism newspaper, where it basically chronicles all the information I collected over the last year about Essex. But we made a TV show, but there is a lot of material, and but there's sadly no book.
Anyway, thank you for looking at this very interesting and complicated county that we all live in, because it is. It's one full of migrants, and always has been, who all come to places. We're all here for different reasons. We all work in different parts of a very big county and have ended up living here or elsewhere. And it's a complicated but interesting place, so thank you.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, that's the other thing I forgot to mention about the Plotlanders, and about that kind of connection with East London as well, and that kind of how people, like in between the wars, came out into Essex to make better lives for themselves, because Essex, London was a very polluted place, very industrial, and people wanted to make better life. And I think, like, my parents moved from Hackney out into Ilford, because they wanted, a back garden, a place, could get on my bike, go to Hainault Forest. So it's that kind of, I think Essex was also from kind of, this kind of aspirational place for people to have a better life for themselves as well. And I think that's always, John Betjeman talked about Essex being a place like between ugliness and beauty, that kind of that huge contrast in Essex between ugliness and beauty, and I think that's also interesting as well.
Yeah, just to mention, we made a film, a TV show about the exhibition, which is showing in the exhibition, but is also available to look online. If you haven't seen already, do. If you haven't, it's fantastic, and then includes Michael, and includes other from other artists and cultural figures. Simon Heffer's in there as well. And it's just kind of I suppose a wonderful snapshot of kind of like the making of it, and the thoughts, the political, the social, the artistic.
Oh yeah, sorry, I just had another idea that I threw at you. I remember it was the idea. Well, I had this idea years ago about skinhead makeover. I was going to turn people to skinheads, and they're going to go in one end of this capsule and come out the other end. And it'd be like, if you went to the army, you get a crew cut, you get the army fatigues, but we turn people into skinheads, like men and women. And then I had the idea about turning people into like quintessential Essex man and Essex girl. So they come in one end with their civvy fatigues and come out the other end
the other side.
transformed.
Yeah,
because I was
into a
thinking about
stereotype.
HD eyebrows. Yeah.
Right.
None of these, but you can see why none of these ideas ever happen.
Any more questions?
But you've got to have a conversation about them regardless.
Two things strike me when I look at the exhibition. The first is class, social class, an uncomfortable subject, I think, and accents are very apparent to me. So I'm around the exhibition hearing what we often hear as working class accents, middle class accents. But my question relates to young people. I'm just wondering how this speaks to young people. I know Firstsite is a very active youth community. Just wondering how young people and children are responding to it, because it's fascinating exhibition of a certain generation. Just wondering how young people relate to it.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a hard one, because I guess my interests were from the county that I knew, where I knew boys, doing up cars and setting them on. And so it's like my particular take of 1980s Essex, 1990s, so I'm not sure the language-wise, the way in for younger people, because obviously, like I said, like some of the language in the newspapers it's very brutal. Young people aren't necessarily used to that kind of rhetoric. So I don't know. I mean, I guess that's more something for Firstsite and what the
It's a good question, and I mean, if it's from the chats I had with our front of house team, it is younger people that are finding it the most difficult of looking at those stereotypes or this image of Essex. I think it is kind of looking over the 30 years, the kind of history about how it's kind of come to this point. I think we need to then survey younger people of kind of coming in and then finding out what their identity is around it. But I certainly hope that it's something that then is, I've had chats with people when you talk about the exhibition, they get very angry about it. When they actually see it, then there's more understanding of it, and there's actually then that quite pride of having a place, an identity kind of picked apart and understand where it has a profile unlike any other county in the country, and whether for good or for bad, or maybe that's because of its proximity to London, it is a very special place. And I think certainly that what we're finding is that people find it it is more positive than it is negative.
Young people might get from the exhibition was this idea of self-reinvention. I was reading recently about what's happening with the employment market, even pre-COVID, and the idea of a permanent job now, or a long-term career in one skilled area is gone, and actually went quite a long time ago, and that the young person who is now entering the employment market now might have to reinvent their entire career roughly every 2 years. So this idea of reinvention of yourself, and this idea of making something of yourself, and the moment in the film where Michael talks to Amy Charles about this idea of using yourself as a material that can be reinvented and can do that for you and can create this work for you, is a really inspiring thing. How we see it as a negative thing, but to me I think it's an absolutely incredible example of young people taking on the contemporary world incredibly successfully and making something extraordinary of it. And that's what we talk about a lot here at Firstsite, because that's basically people using their imaginations. If you can use your imagination, and if you can envision what your future might look like, in fact you're 9 times more likely to make that into a reality. So Towie is just full of people making visions of themselves and turning that vision into a reality and making an incredible success out of it. And what they've done is put Essex on the map as a place where that is something that you can do. I mean, I bought my first ever house because I now live in Essex. I'm 45. I couldn't do that anywhere else. So Essex is just this wonderful place where you can anything you like, really. Partly because of that attitude towards it, I think, partly because it is dismissed. It leaves a huge blank canvas. And I hope young people might see something of that in the show.
Alexism.
Possibly in response to this gentleman's question about whether there's a book or a catalogue, my reaction to the exhibition is that it's actually more of a catalogue than an exhibition. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way. In fact, I'd go so far as to suggest, Michael, that you are someone who has an artistic approach to archiving and to cataloguing, and that I would probably argue against your own suggestion that you like to take things apart, only because I think you take things apart in terms of deconstructing them and understanding them, but the irony, for example, of breakdown, and it's really gratifying to see breakdown here now, all these years later, because I do remember standing outside the old CNA, not lamenting the fact that CNA had disappeared, actually really enjoying watching it. But the irony of that project seems to be that at the end of it there should have been nothing. But actually in many ways there's much more now than there ever was then, because of the effort that you went to list and archive every single piece. So how do you react to the suggestion that you actually don't take things apart, you find a very, very clever and unusual way of representing things as they are?
Yeah, because I try, because destruction is also, people forget it's also creative, so it's not necessarily nihilistic. Something normally comes out of it, whether it's a ruin or something else comes out of it. I had an exhibition called Scaled Down in 2017, was 18, where all the things on the gallery inventory, all the things that was left unsold, all the things that you always have these awkward conversations with your gallery about why didn't this sell, but what that did. But anyway, it's all, and so suddenly I made a body of works where all that my homage to New York drawings that remained unsold, I decided to reform them and make them into little cubes. And they appeared on the floor. So everything, we made technical measurements and everything kind of got, from my saints. I made a whole body of work where, we reformed them into something else. So, and I understand it because it's to animate an archive, I think, is what you're talking about. And I think, in some respects, I think you're right. It is a book in a way. And then it's like and my job is to try and animate that to make it interesting for people to be in, to experience, I think. And I think that's why I talked about breakdown was the experience that people come away with. Nothing else, was just how they experienced it whilst they were there. And I think to hear about it or to listen about it or see it on a screen or it's a very different thing, and
Sorry, I did have another question. Partly to do with aspiration and personality in Essex. Psychogeography has led to a current fascination with the idea that our physical geography shapes us. And I was thinking, particularly when you, Sally, were talking about aspiration, about the possibility that actually Essex has no personality, that it's very much all about everything that surrounds it. It's looking out to sea, it's looking back to London, it's looking out at landscapes that are considered to be far more bucolic and beautiful, even though obviously Essex has beautiful landscapes of its own. And was wondering to myself whether actually the whole idea of aspiring to something was because people are looking to be something else, partly because that's what this place is about. Whether or not you see things that way, what I wondered is whether as a result of your own trips through the landscape, you've managed to make any direct connection between the physical geography of the place and the people that you've been observing so acutely?
I don't know how to answer that. I'd have to think about that. No, I mean, I think like Sally was talking about making over, making up. I think people, a makeover is really trying to make yourself better in a sense, and talking about aspiration and recreation of the self. I think, but I don't. Yeah, I'd have to think about. Sorry, yeah, Stuart.
There's certainly the critical mass of material that's in there. I think is quite astounding of seeing it. Which then comes from a view into looking at Essex. What I've always found out, what I've always thought about this county from when I started working in it, is that it was so positive and it felt like you could do anything. It was just, my career's kind of taken me around half of the country. I've never found a place that was so ready to give it a go and to do stuff and to get on with it, and that's just. And I don't think of it. I can think of one county I've worked in where it was made aware to me I was from the wrong side of the Pennines, and everything seemed to be a bit moany and a bit kind of lamenting. Whereas this just gets on with it. We can achieve. We are Essex, and I think that's. And I think somebody mentioned before about why does Essex get this and Kent doesn't get it, and I don't know the answer. You made a joke at one point of saying that your fee was being covered by Kent, wasn't it? And there's the kind of yeah, do you remember
But
that?
no.
And I just wondered if part of that was because
of
that.
Okay, I get the
of
I get
that
the joke,
view
yeah.
is that it's unafraid. Just do it, and if you like something, you make it happen. But that's from an outsider's point of view.
Yeah, I mean, Billy Bragg talked about the estuary as being a place where, someone talked about the Windrush community, about how it also brought in ideas, brought in the Dutch at a certain point. It brought in things as well. It brought in new ideas, new people. So I think it's like a sponge in a way. That's what I like. That's what I like about it. Yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah, it was.
Any?
We couldn't answer it.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
So, yeah.
Any more? Should we? We'll leave it there if there's no more. Michael, thank you so much.
Not at all.
Thanks for tonight. Thanks for an amazing show, and thank you for coming.